Following the example of women through the centuries, Abili sets out for the field early each morning. In the pail she carries on her head are the necessary tools for the day. But although it appears to be like every other day, today a new future awaits the 35-year-old Abili as she heads for the rice field about a kilometer away. Her husband, Cumpridu, is on his way to the forest to meet his companions and collect palm wine. About 36 years of age, he is now taking part in a ceremony called Grandeza, the first stage in a manhood ritual which means he will have to leave Abili forever. Not because they want to, but because tradition demands it. We are in the small island village of Endena, in the Bissagos Islands off the western coast of Africa. The inhabitants of the village number around 200 and live according to the ancient laws of their tribe. The village chief Nkema washes his face. He's the most powerful man and the spokesman of the elders, safeguarding tradition. For the villagers, his words are law. Everything and everyone is under his watchful eye. As the oldest of the villagers, he is accorded the unlimited respect of all who live there. People who have reached a high age become grandes, elders of the village, and no one dares oppose them. Here, even time follows other rules, and the day's activities begin in their own good time. By the time Nkeme and his son smoke their first pipe of the day, most of the others have already set out to work in the fields. It's harvest time in the rice fields of the forest. Women do the work in the fields, generally with help from the men, but not in this instance. A straw hut at the edge of the field is the daily center of family life. Here the rice is cut, washed and boiled. In a pot, Abili is cooking new rice with lemon juice and palm oil for her family. Her husband, Cumpridu, however, will not eat this food. For 6 weeks, during the entire period of the Grandeza, Abili is not allowed to cook for Cumpridu. He is, however, close at hand, in the part of the forest into which women are forbidden to go. If a woman were to come to this place, her days would be numbered. Cumpridu and his companions are preparing funnels from palm leaves, which will be used in tapping the sap from the trees. It's quite normal work, but at this time it is part of a male ceremony and hidden from the eyes of women. Everything that goes on here is secret, and if any women were to become too curious, Cumpridu would only have to say, "This woman was watching us and must die." God would hear this and kill the woman, through witchcraft, they believe. Such a death threatens also men who approach too close to the secrets of women. The Bissagos are home to Cumpridu, Abili, and the other Bidyogo people. They are a proud and determined island people who have been able to avoid, for the most part, the influences of the outside world, especially here on the island of Canyabaque. Only several decades ago, uninvited guests, especially white men, were simply killed before they reached the beaches. The labyrinths of mangroves which surround the island made it easy for the natives. The people of Canyabaque were feared because of their resistance and determination to maintain their ancient traditions. the former Portuguese colonial lords of Guinea-Bissau had little interest in the Bissagos Islands off the coast. Here there were neither mineral resources nor prized hardwoods. The natives were allowed to continue to live their traditional existence and are thus still capable of living exclusively on nature's bounty. They fish as their forefathers did. As the tide ebbs, they trap in their nets, fish making their way seawards. As the tide ebbs, women and children head out onto the sands to collect food. They have to know where to tread, however, as there are plenty of dangerous channels and quicksand. They collect mangrove fruits, mussels and small crabs, which they dig from deep down in the mud. A gourmet delicacy. Abili's daughters are used to the work and pay no notice to the burning sun, which can exceed 40 degrees Celsius at midday. The supplies they brought back from the beach have helped to keep the family going in recent weeks. After rice stocks had been exhausted, these seldom last until the next harvest. Meanwhile, the fishermen have arrived to take up their nets. This time, they failed to catch a single fish, as has so often been the case recently. Even Sharup, the village's best fisherman, has only an empty net. Foreign fishermen have recently increased their fishing in the islands, competing with the Bissagos. Before they appeared in motorized boats, there was always plenty of fish. The archipelago is the most important rearing grounds for fish along the west coast of Africa. There is no control of fisheries, however, and if this situation continues, these enormous natural fishing grounds may be completely destroyed. Abili's field has to provide her family with rice for the entire coming year. Each day she checks for ripe heads of grain, which are cut individually. She cannot wait for the entire field to ripen, as there are plenty of competitors for the food. Monkeys, rats, and above all, swarms of small birds await their opportunity. Each harvest time, a minor war breaks out between humans and birds. The feathered thieves keep everyone busy. It's mainly the task of the children to protect the field. It's only a few years since the birds arrived on the island, and no one knows where they came from. Occasionally, there are a few hours of peace from the attacks of the birds. Abili harvests the ripe grain with a knife-sharp oyster shell. She could certainly do with Compritu's help. But even he could do nothing about the scratches on her legs caused by the leaves. Yuba, her daughter, has already begun work grinding the grain. The children wait eagerly for a taste of the grain. They have had little to eat in recent weeks, as the previous year's rice was long since finished. They have never had bread or potatoes. Rice is the staple food on the islands, but over a third of the harvest is lost to the birds. While Juba is doing women's work, her brothers, Giorgio and Anjo, are busy extracting and cleaning palm kernels, a short ways up the field. The fruit of the oil palm is the second most important food source of the Bijoko. From it they obtain palm oil, a basic ingredient in much of their food. Every family member has his job to do. With the exception of Comprido. Even though he's practically within sight, his work does his family no good. At just this moment, when his wife badly needs his help, he's not allowed to help her. The eldest men of the village have so decided. He's thinning the palm leaves in order to tap off the sap for palm wine. Comprido has no time to worry about the field, as he has to devote all his efforts to collecting a few litres of palm wine, which he will turn over to the seniors at the end of the day. He fastens the funnel of palm leaves, which he made earlier, to the spot he has cleared, and the sap from the tree runs into a gourd bottle below. The heat causes the sweet juice to ferment immediately upon trickling from the trunk. The longer it is exposed to the heat, the higher its alcohol content. After several hours, the palm wine will be ready, fresh from the tree. All of Comprido's duties at this time are part of a test of manhood. The Bijoga do not measure their age in years, but according to stages of maturity. Although Comprido is already 36, he still has to demonstrate that he's mature enough to enter the fellowship of the village adults. Such tests are conducted by the eldest men of the village at intervals of many years, and all the young men of the village must take part, regardless of their age. All of them now have to take their leave of their wives and families. The same applies to those who are still bachelors as to those who have wives and families. No one knows when the day of separation will come, whether it will be after a few months or a year or two. The present trial period lasts for 6 months and is only a foretaste of what is to come. For 6 weeks, the young men now legally belong to the elders of the village. They regard themselves as their prisoners and are exclusively concerned with providing them with food and drink and obeying their orders. They have to obtain fish, meat, rice, mussels or palm wine and prepare them a feast daily. After this, it is not long until the actual manhood ritual, the fanado, takes place. When I approach the ritual, who can I ask for help? Mario's song expresses the fears of the men facing the torments of the manhood ritual. He does not follow the beaten paths through the forest, but crosses hither and thither over logs and rocks, the privilege of the young Bijogo males. In their youth, they have few obligations and can enjoy all that life in the jungle of youth has to offer. Some have girlfriends, often more than one each. Others establish families. But anything they put their hand to at this time is without responsibility. They are cabaros, young men who are allowed to enjoy life, live and play.
Mario?
Ơi?
Không sao hả? Que a gente escata cai sem Julie. Esta cai. Que a hora que cai agora, outro está morrendo já. Mas que sempre?
Fica sempre. Fica como é tudo. Aquilo é uma coisa de compreta.
The bees, dizzied by the palm wine, are liable to do anything, and, in the absence of a t-shirt, an old rice sack serves as protection.
Kaki cantiga guna canta?
Esse cantiga de gente de uno.
Gente de uno.
Gente de uno. Esta es la uma grande city de banco. Unaweza na mimi parei.
The forest is not without its dangers, and living here is not as pleasant as it may seem at first sight. Although the forest is a rich provider, it demands its sacrifices as well. Many Bissagos die each year of malaria, which is endemic here, and snake bites, as the treatments the inhabitants concoct and use do not always work. Out here into the forest, the cabarros must move when the elders declare their period of youth to be ended. The years of extensive freedom are thus followed by years of semi-slavery and asceticism, which follow upon the conclusion of the admission ritual. They must prove themselves, show they are mature enough to grapple with life. The 6-week grandeza period, which is now underway, is an indication that the time of ritual is not far off.
Que tem coisa que na pensa só meu filho, treino também meu filho, põe ele estudo na escola, tudo para bater na escola, porque ano que não vim, não acaba com minha mulher, média, não é despedido outro, a mim não compra fano, manga ele com estudo, minha mulher e traz arroz, tudo, saco de arroz, 2 sacos, e luma, gente de tudo, não despedido outro. Na dale monsinho e damo. No despedi yananke. Tudo. Ele leva filho. Ele leva outro. Na tem 6 anos na mato. E na buscou outro homem. Olha quem sai na mato na buscou outra mulher. E aquilo que na pensa. Que mandam punho filho. Vem da escola. Se tem sorte, se encoja mulher, que te cate. Mas ele corre mal inoja. Inoja homem.
Ist das nicht schwer für ihn?
Eu não sei que é difícil para você. Vou largar a mulher, canto filho.
Gente cadena porque não cana e como aquilo é obrigatória para desenhar mulher para não despedir outro. Aquilo é obrigatória. Aquilo até pensa aquilo é mal para mim. É mal. Aquilo até outro dia até pensa aquilo até fina na cabeça assim. Até fina na cabeça assim. Até lá me tá saindo no YouTube, prof. Para aquilo para não costuma já outro. Aquele. Ano que não tem aquele, não será que já quase lá para 15 anos, nós 20 anos. Nós não costuma já outro. Que ele até pensa que lá toque balançar a cabeça assim. Para ver que sabe me. Mas aquilo é obrigatório, em até a maneira que não faz.
Those who have been chosen to undergo the ritual now have to practice their asceticism. Comprido is allowed to speak to Abili, but may not touch her nor sleep under the same roof.
Ma bukana perde buminje. Papi su perde buminje, buna muri. Buna muri ta konta na ira. Kimanda no te medi. Porque esse pasi vai agi muri.
The judgment will fall in the form of an accident or illness, which always leads to death. Such is the power of faith. At midday, the village is completely deserted. Most people are working in the fields or at their duties in the forest. Abili and Cumpridu both knew what awaited them when they married. They knew that marriage to a man who had not yet completed fanato would have to come to an abrupt end sooner or later. But love often proves stronger than good sense. Cumpridu arrives at the family hut at dinner time as usual. His oldest daughter cooks his meal. He must keep his distance from Abili, may not eat the food she has cooked for the family, nor sleep under the same roof as she. Cumpridu is now only an onlooker in his own family. His food may not include rice nor meat of any sort. It's composed mainly of mussels and najambe, which is made from mangrove fruit. In a few weeks' time, this preparatory period will be over, and family life will return to almost normal for a while, until the final separation. After Cumpridu returns from the forest in 6 years' time, he will spend another 3 days with Abili, without them touching one another. A cow will be slaughtered, and they will tell each other of the major events during his absence. Abili will act as if Cumpridu has only been away on a journey. On the 3rd day, she will inform him that she has found another husband, and she will help him to find himself a new wife. She will find a wife to suit him and teach her to cook his favorite meals and how best to please him. So tradition dictates.
Ami prosino na da pasada Cumpridu nta falarora kino kabakeli bai fanana kana casado mas padeu judamba panha filho baranda se tu diga pumpa está direito kana casa mas nunca kutro assim que nunca brinca que é sempre falar manca se dinda madi mas eu copo de diante traço um pouco de si.
Ah? Ninguém não ala nidi, ambi não gawa.
Vou falar veles, mas se a situação de bem vai falar com pena lixo de chique perto de bem. Se que lá bem isso mas o papo como morre. Começa a lembrar de que vou falar.
Sim, pronto, falar isso. Então ficam caçados não pronto. Aquilo ita parece como uma tem lambe filho, para ter roupa para eles, porque se papai vivo. Ninguém nos me sinta ali na tabanca, nunca tem outro, Cumpridu sinta no outro lado. Aquilo é cabali pena, porque e kana passar cartão, mas kana juve mas só assim ninguém. Olha, ita sinto, descer de cá.
Não sou gosta de coisa de Cumpridu.
Gosta dele tio demais. Gosta dele. Então já se casta assim, hora que não lembrar se tempo que nem vai fanado. Outra hora anta chora por assim dingia miso. Ta sinti kasabi.
Abili smiles, though, when asked why these rules exist.
História que nós tá dado. Como é que nada ba? Primeiro ba, itemba homem solteiro. E cá tem mulher nessa vida. Toque grande. Bom, eu vim falar como ainda lembra coisa. Ele na bota meninos fanado. Ora que vai fanado. Essa é a na torna que se mulher. Ora que ele bi, ora que vai buscar aqui mulher e tá a casa aqui. É como anda aqui com essa série. E vim ficar assim e agorado. É fácil de atar, né? Não tô tornando com o bom amigo namoro. Bom.
Enkeme sends a message to the males that they are to meet at Grandeza in the clearing in the forest. Enkeme sends messages by drum. Only he can drum, and all the men are taught to understand its symbols. The beating of the drum can be heard for great distances, and in this way Enkeme can deliver his messages and announce news. Although the women are not expected to understand the speech of the drum, they do all the same, and everyone is to obey its messages, as they represent the will of the gods. All the young men, the cabarros, have gathered in a large clearing in the forest. For 2 to 3 hours they must remain there, naked in the burning heat of the sun. While across the clearing from them, the elders have arranged themselves comfortably, under sunshade roofs made of palm branches and leaves. In the afternoon of each day, a sort of test is held, where the contributions of the cabarros are assessed and recorded. The man directing the ceremony is Camion, who is the only one of the elders who knows how to read and write. The young men turn over all they bring to the elders. Today it is palm wine, which they offer them, and they may not touch the wine themselves, nor retain any that they have collected for their own or their family's consumption. The ceremony, which lasts many hours, begins with the elders tasting the wine. They relax in the shade, and the cabarros pour them wine in the order of respect. They allow themselves to be served because as elders they have the right to a good life, to enjoy respect and comfort, not least where food and drink are concerned. And if the wine is good, then one can naturally take a drop or two home. Once the wine has been tasted, it's time to get down to some serious work, which involves checking how much each individual has contributed to the ceremony. The representatives of the young men and the elders explain who has brought in what. Each of the cabarros has a stake where his gifts are set. Nothing escapes the watchful eyes of the elders, as it turns out that there are no contributions at some of the stakes. Camion thus marks the stakes, which were lacking. The notches on the stakes tell their own story. The more a man has contributed, the less he need fear the judgment of the elders. Before continuing further, the wine is divided among the elders. The power relationship is clear. The elders receive the gifts and pass judgment. The younger men offer their gifts and remain silent. This ceremony is a sort of condensed version of the life which awaits the young men in the forest. For a period of many years they will be at the mercy of the elders. During that time, they have to show them obedience in every respect. They have to accept their tribulations without complaint, and even offer the elders gifts in return: cows, wild goats, pigs, rice, fish, or palm wine. An unusual interaction of age and youth.
Mana benya ka? Mana benda dah tamam begini.
An intermediary repeats his words, for the Cabaro himself is not allowed to address the chief. After discussing the matter briefly, the elders agree to accept the substitution. Next, each man is to approach his stake, and his obligations are made clear to him.
Mari.
The Jesuit priest and anthropologist Luigi Scannabulo, who has lived in the islands for decades, maintains that the ritual serves to chain the strength of the younger men to the purposes of the good of the society. By responding to the cruelty of the elders by offering them gifts, they learn to stand together through thick and thin. During this period, they form bonds of friendship which will last throughout their lives. The jungle schooling does at least serve to pass on the tradition to the younger generation. While all this is going on, the elders use the time for various small jobs. Even a thundering speech from Nkeme, addressed to the spokesman of the young men and scolding them, fails to disturb the elders at their work. After about an hour, Nkeme's speech of self-approbation is over, and the ceremony in the forest thereby concluded. The men are glad to get to their feet, as it is difficult to sit for hours on the ground. The elders have begun to feel high after all the palm wine, and the gathering soon dissolves. Nothing which has occurred here may be reported elsewhere, and all participants are sworn to remain silent as to what has taken place. While the Cabaros collect their empty containers, the elders are preparing for a festival. They decorate their bodies for the dancing and heat the drums over the fire so that they will resound powerfully when the dancing begins. Comprido and his comrades have the rest of the day for themselves, and people are at work in the fields until sunset. Comprido wants to finish making himself a new strap for climbing palm trees. The children are all busy at their tasks. Juba, who is 12 years old, is never unoccupied for a moment. Her younger sister, Bontia, who is only 7, tries her best to grind the grain, but the pestle is heavy and a strain for her immature muscles. The family makes almost everything they need for their daily pursuits themselves. They are independent of external forces and self-sufficient in most respects. Despite this, modern ways of life are attractive for the young people.
Un camiste na prova, un camiste.
Pavili che? Un camiste.
Lei cancera.
E cancera.
Cancera, papà ta castiga.
Ma gosi ca cancera che maniera, un bocado só.
Aí prova em casa, olha que a gente tá fazendo isso, irmão, a tá me história.
Ah.
Que tá me história na prova.
Ma no tempo antigo era mais duro.
Agora, mas não é resultado. Resultado é lindo. Não, é quando que sangue na saída agora.
A mim olha suto grande, malinca suto grande.
Começo a comer resultado. Mas
olha aqui na cava.
Mas resultado é resultado.
Ma gente gosta di gente di Canyabaque, gente forte, gente giro, gente...
gente forte. Trabalho que ensina a fazer ali Canyabaque. Gente de praça é capaz de fazer. É capaz. É por mesmo. Que não fazem um bocado de cansa.
From the end of a palm leaf, Comprito has now braided a strong rope. Juba is knotting a grass skirt for herself. She gets the material from tree bark, which she peels off the branches. The family hut and surrounding area is like a small workshop. Here money is still of no great importance. People exchange necessities or make what they need themselves. The rule is that if a man has enough of something that another needs, then it's natural to share it with him. In addition, most people have some family connections. The children live together in the village as if in a large family, and because of the steady changes in family makeup, it's almost impossible to keep track of who is connected to whom. Here palm oil is being extracted, the main source of income for the islanders. The palm kernels are smashed so that the fibers will separate from the hard kernels. Kernels and fibers. Different types of oil can be produced from each. The youth of the village have been assembled to help in the work. They're strong enough and have time to do the work. They process the palm fruit of the various families jointly. The daily shower. But now, as the rainy season is drawing to a close, it will last only a few minutes. All the tools for oil production belong to the fisherman Charup. He makes his living primarily by processing oil for the villagers, who pay for the work with rice and other staples. Charup has no field, and fishing is rather poor at present. After the fiber mass has been boiled, the oil is wrung from it by hand. The oil is valuable. It is eaten in the form of strong sauces, used for medicinal purposes, and sold to the mainland. The oil is the most important of the few cash products of the residents of Canyabaque. Abili brings the oil kernels her sons have collected and places them in Charup's crusher. The elders enter the village dancing. Despite the 35-degree heat, they will dance for several hours, accompanied by the elderly women of the village. The elders have good reason to celebrate. It is they who have the power in the village, and the separation of young men and women is long behind them, even if most of them have never completely recovered. Why is the separation then necessary at all? The Bissagos have no longer an answer to the question. The dance and the rhythm of the drums attract all the villagers to take part in the festivities. Only old Yak, the eldest woman of the village, is not amused and shakes her head at the wild behavior of the elders. For the people in the fields, the day is not yet at an end, however. The elders may be able to enjoy themselves dancing. But for Compritu and Abili, a difficult time is approaching.
Mangkani sora na burkunyu sora. Sin sora jinti na fala bo ko baru bu kota burkunyu. Buna sora bu munjer. Kusegite bu kolegi ka sora buna sora. Ngana sora. Nyi munjeli ke nata sora. Inata sora. Song. Jinti kata igili ke na fensa.
Nansi masih outro bias. Sin nansi outro bias. Na mesti pankasa kuome. Kuno kana kabake. Pano kumpu casa di nós. Não consume li. No kumpu no horta, no sumia kusas na horta, porta baitela. Kusas fasibata bindi o chambo kadinho di dinheiro. Nino subata come outro. Apakah kau pangka ba mas que kilo me pensi que Tena na fim de no vida.